Hey guys, welcome to LaughNapkin. My name is Frank, and today we're looking at some Rslashprorevenge. This is actually a damn good story. But before we get into it, I want to give a big shout out to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. I couldn't do these videos without you. Thank you so much. Now let's get into it. My parents and sister feared their only neighbor for 5 years. He sued, or threatened to sue, everyone he could. He made it personal for me when he put a gun to my dog's head to show his dominance. Around 8 years ago, my parents and sister had moved out to a log cabin that we built as a family for 6+ years. They live on a secluded lake and bought 10 acres for themselves, and to the north, another couple bought the 5-acre plot right next to us. We were the only two neighbors next to each other for 1.8 miles. At first, the couple was friendly and had no problems at all. After about 6 months of them living there and building their new home, my parents bought 144 acres to the north of them. This means that his property is sandwiched between our two properties, and since the only way we can get to our land is to cross his strip of land due to easement laws, he had no problems at first, but one day the trail we used to get to our land to the north was covered with large logs, branches, yellow tape, and a no trespassing sign. My dad went to go ask what was going on. The owner, we'll call him John, came up to my dad and I and demanded that we give him a 20-yard wide and 400-yard long piece of our property to the north of him. He said he wanted to cut down some of the trees to the north of him to make sure none of them fell on his house. This is a thickly wooded area. So, of course, my dad said no, and that he wouldn't even sell this small portion of land that he requested to be given to him for free. We'll find out at the end of this story as to why he wanted this small strip of land so badly. This is where a 5-year crap storm started. Before I mention all the crazy things he had done to us over the years, I wanted to point out that he is a born fraud and took a settlement from the railroad company he worked for due to a back injury that would leave him disabled for life. Not true at all. We found out that he sues everyone that gets in his way because his oldest daughter is a lawyer and works the system. Here's a small list of the stuff he has pulled, mainly towards my parents, along with others. He had gotten away with everything for 5 years because his daughter tells him how to stay in the clear. Also, he was on his 5th marriage, so not the most likable guy. He slashed the tires of our 2 4-wheelers so we couldn't drive them to our land to the north on 2 occasions. He shot out and or slashed the tires of our vehicle when we were gone or in the middle of the night. We put up some cameras, but they were not clear enough to prove it was him. My golden retriever, Bailey, is outside most of the day, and John's dog is also named Bailey. The 2 dogs loved to play together, but John did not like that. He said he would shoot my dog in the stomach if he ever went on his property again. After that, weeks later, he would start to yell out Bailey to lure our dog onto his property. He grabbed my dog by the collar and put a pistol to his head and said that he'd kill my dog if he ever came on his property again, or played with his dog. We put up an underground electric fence so she wouldn't go over there anymore, even though John would always try to lure her into his yard. On several occasions, he would hit golf balls into our windows and blame it on me, since I was a golfer. Once again, everything he did, we could not prove it in court. When his house was being built, he went through 3 different contractors because John was threatening to sue every contractor for every little thing, and all 3 contractors left him. When he was getting his driveway poured, he offered to help the contractor, and once again he was pulling another scam. Where I live, if someone starts helping a contractor with work, there is a weird law that states that a contractor would need to pay John for his work he helped with. This went to court and he got his $10,000 driveway for free, plus took him for another $15,000 grand for some other BS. We too were in the process of finishing up my parents' house, and he stole very specific wood from our place to use in his house. Juniper, diamond willow, thick pine for window bucks, a couple $1,000s worth of wood. Once again, we didn't have enough evidence for a search warrant. During Thanksgiving several years ago, our house started on fire due to a stone mason cutting corners and using cheap and wrong parts for our fireplace. Firefighters from 5 cities were dispatched because we live in the country. Due to the amount of fire trucks that were coming and going, John took his truck and parked it sideways on a strip of road that was tight, so that the firefighters coming and going could not get through. He stated that we were ruining their Thanksgiving due to the commotion of our house burning down and fire truck sirens. The next fire truck that showed up used the force within their rights to plow his truck off the road. John tried to sue us and the fire department for the damage to his truck, but it never even made it to court, because the fire department had the rights to do so. What I listed above only scratched the surface. There is so much more stuff he did to my family that my mom and sister wanted to move, because they were afraid what he might do next. This is where all the pieces start to fall into place to take him down. The spring after our house burned down, there was a storm and 2 trees from our property fell onto John's lawn, and he called demanding that we remove the trees. We had no equipment at this time, told him we couldn't get to that immediately. So what John did was cut down a 20 by 40 yard area of trees to drag the trees onto our property to the north of him. Later, he set the pile of wood on fire and burned down 20 plus more trees and 20 acres of prairie grass. One of the trees that he burned down to the north was inhabited by a bald eagle. We could confirm the cutting down of 24 trees to drag the fallen trees that were in his yard, but we couldn't prove the fire that was started to burn those sawed-up trees. When I saw that he had cut down a number of our trees on our property to the north of him, I took detailed photos of all the cut down trees and marked the type of tree and how thick the trunks were. Turns out that in my state, there's a monetary value to those trees, and he was screwed. However, when I was marking up the trees he cut down, I realized I didn't know where the true property line was. A few weeks later, I found the prints to where the property line was, and he built his house, 500 square foot garage, and underground propane tank a few feet onto our property. So now we found out why he wanted that land so bad before we would figure it out. Now during this time, John had put his house up for sale and put a $120,000 markup on what the actual market price was. We found out why he was doing this, because he and a friend had gambled a lot of their savings on buying a property around the lake, and they were selling no lots. He was bleeding money. We were finally able to put a lien on his house, and that was his only lifeline to get cash to make their land payments. To make the rest of the story go by faster, I'll skip to the part where we end up buying his house. We told him to put the price back down to market value, and then my father said that we could either settle the price of the trees out of court that he cut down of ours, and he agreed to settle that into the price of the house. My dad also identified the stolen wood, and we would trace it back to the same unique wood in our house, and we would sue him for that too, or he could drop the price for stealing our materials. Lastly, because John was such an a-hole, my dad used the leverage of the lien we had on his house to drop the value even more. John was bleeding money and was desperate for anything. So in the end, my parents bought his house for 28% of its market value. John's 4th wife would end up leaving him a year later. He filed for bankruptcy, lost his land development area since he was upside down in the payments, and now lives in a cheap studio apartment alone. Ooh, that's what you get, John, for putting a gun to a golden retriever's head, you jerk. Wow, that was some good revenge. Let me know what you guys thought about that in the comment section below. Oh, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to show your support by subscribing. It really helps me out big time.